You don't belong in our VIP lounge. Security will escort you out now." Victoria Blackwell's words cut through the marble-floored executive lounge like a blade sharp enough for every platinum member to hear. She wasn't whispering. She wasn't being discreet. She said it with the authority of someone who believed her uniform made her untouchable. What she didn't know was that in exactly 14 minutes, the woman she just humiliated would return with a badge that would end Victoria's career forever. But let's rewind to how this moment started, because sometimes the most devastating crashes begin with the smoothest takeoffs. Before we dive into this story, I want to know where you're watching from. Drop your city in the comments below. And if this moment stops you in your tracks the way it did everyone in that lounge, hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. Because what you're about to witness will change how you think about power, respect, and justice. The woman standing at the entrance of the Skyline Airways VIP lounge was Maya Rodriguez, 26 years old, dressed in black jeans, a crisp white blouse, and a navy blazer that had seen better days. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she carried a worn leather messenger bag that looked like it had traveled more miles than most frequent flyers. Maya didn't look like the typical first-class passenger, and that was exactly the problem. She had just stepped off a red-eye flight from Chicago, where she'd spent the last 48 hours in emergency board meetings that would determine the future of Skyline Airways. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages from corporate headquarters, but Maya ignored them. She needed 30 minutes of quiet before her connecting flight to Seattle. 30 minutes to decompress in the executive lounge that her platinum status guaranteed her access to. Maya approached the reception desk where Victoria Blackwell stood like a guardian at the gates of paradise. Victoria was 34, tall and elegant, with blonde hair styled in a perfect chignon that probably took an hour to achieve. Her navy dress was designer. Her pearls were real, and her smile was practiced. She wore her authority like expensive perfume, strong enough to make an impression, but subtle enough to seem natural. Victoria had been the VIP lounge manager for 8 years, and in that time she had cultivated a reputation for maintaining what she called standards. She believed the lounge was her kingdom, and she was its queen, deciding who was worthy of entrance and who needed to be turned away. To Victoria, appearances mattered more than credentials, and assumptions mattered more than facts. The lounge itself was a monument to luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the Denver skyline. Marble floors reflected crystal chandeliers, and leather furniture arranged in intimate seating areas promised comfort and privacy. A full bar staffed by professional mixologists served top-shelf liquor, while a buffet offered gourmet meals prepared by award-winning chefs. This wasn't just a waiting area. It was a symbol of status, and Victoria was its gatekeeper. Maya had earned her access to this world the hard way. 6 years ago, she had started as ground crew at Skyline Airways, loading luggage in 100-degree heat and -20 cold. She worked double shifts, took night classes, and slowly climbed the corporate ladder. Operations coordinator, regional supervisor, department manager, and finally senior director of operations with a seat on the board of directors. But none of that showed in her casual clothes or her tired eyes. Victoria saw what she wanted to see, a young black woman who didn't fit her image of who belonged in the VIP lounge. Maya saw what she always saw, another test of her patience and professionalism. Neither woman knew they were about to make history. Maya walked to the reception desk with confident steps despite her exhaustion. She reached into her messenger bag and pulled out her platinum status card, the black plastic gleaming under the crystal lights. She placed it on the marble counter with a soft click. "Good afternoon," Maya said, her voice steady and professional. "I'd like to access the lounge, please." Victoria looked at the card without picking it up, then slowly raised her eyes to meet Maya's. Her expression was polite but skeptical, the kind of look reserved for people who might be trying to pull a fast one. "I'm sorry," Victoria said, her tone suggesting she wasn't sorry at all, "but this lounge is exclusively for our premium members. The general waiting area is back near the main gates." Maya blinked slowly, processing what she'd just heard. She gestured to the card on the counter. "This is a platinum status card. I am a premium member." Victoria's smile tightened. "I'll need to verify that. We get people trying to use fake cards or expired memberships all the time. It's actually a bigger problem than you might think." She still hadn't touched the card. "Please scan it," Maya said, maintaining her calm tone. "I have a connecting flight in 2 hours, and I'd like to get some work done before boarding." "Our system is running a bit slow today," Victoria replied. Which wasn't true. The computer was working perfectly fine. "And honestly, looking at you, I'm not sure this is legitimate. People your age don't typically have platinum status unless—" She let the sentence hang, the implication clear. Maya felt a familiar tightness in her chest, the same feeling she'd experienced countless times throughout her career, when someone looked at her and decided she didn't belong. But she had learned long ago that losing her temper only gave people like Victoria more ammunition, unless what Maya asked quietly. Victoria shrugged a gesture designed to appear casual but laden with meaning, unless it's a family member's card or there's some other explanation. "Look, I'm not trying to be difficult, but we have policies for a reason." Around them, other lounge guests were beginning to notice the conversation. A man in an expensive suit looked up from his laptop. An elderly woman paused her phone conversation. The atmosphere previously filled with the quiet hum of business travel now carried an undercurrent of tension. Maya took a slow, deep breath. "I understand you have policies. I'm asking you to follow them. Scan my card, verify my membership, and allow me to enter the lounge that I have every right to access." Victoria crossed her arms, her pearl bracelet catching the light. "Your attitude isn't helping your case, miss. If you were really a platinum member, you'd understand how these things work. You'd be patient while I do my job." "I am being patient," Maya replied. "What I'm not being is silent while you refuse to do yours." For the first time, Victoria looked genuinely annoyed. She was used to people backing down when challenged, used to her authority being accepted without question. Maya's quiet confidence was unsettling. "I'm going to need you to step aside," Victoria said, her voice rising slightly. "You're holding up the line." Maya looked around. There was no line. She was the only person waiting to enter the lounge. "What line?" Maya asked. Victoria's face flushed pink. "Don't get smart with me. I'm trying to be polite here, but you're making this more difficult than it needs to be. I'm making this difficult." Maya's voice remained level, but there was steel underneath. "I presented valid credentials and asked for access to a service I pay for. You refused to verify those credentials based on your personal assumptions about what I look like. How exactly am I the one making this difficult?" The man with the laptop was now openly staring. The elderly woman had ended her phone call and was watching with keen interest. Victoria noticed the audience and seemed to draw energy from it, as if their attention validated her position. "Look," Victoria said, attempting to sound reasonable. "I've been doing this job for 8 years. I know what our typical platinum members look like, and I know what our policies require. If you want to make a scene, that's your choice, but I'm not letting you into this lounge without proper verification." Maya nodded slowly. "Then verify it. Scan the card. I told you the system is slow. Then we'll wait for it." Victoria's jaw tightened. She had painted herself into a corner, and she knew it. But admitting she was wrong would mean losing face in front of the other guests, and her pride wouldn't allow that. "Fine," Victoria said sharply. "But don't expect an apology when this card comes back as invalid or expired." She finally picked up Maya's platinum card, handling it like it might contaminate her. But instead of scanning it at the computer terminal, she held it up to the light, examining it like a detective studying evidence. "These fakes are getting really sophisticated," Victoria announced to no one in particular. "But there are always telltale signs if you know what to look for." Maya's patience was wearing thin, but she had learned that reacting emotionally to discrimination only made things worse. Instead, she pulled out her phone and checked the time. In 6 hours, she would be in a board meeting where she would help decide the future of this very airline. In 6 hours, she would be sitting across the table from the CEO discussing strategies that would affect thousands of employees and millions of passengers. But right now, she was just another black woman being told she didn't belong. Victoria continued her theatrical examination of Maya's card, turning it over and over, as if the answers to her suspicions would reveal themselves through sheer determination. The performance was clearly for the benefit of the other lounge guests who were no longer pretending not to watch. Jessica Victoria called sharply to her assistant. Jessica Martinez hurried over from the check-in area where she'd been organizing arrival logs. At 28, Jessica was newer to the job, having been hired only 6 months earlier. She was a single mother working her way through night school, and she needed this job desperately. But she also had a conscience, and what she was witnessing made her deeply uncomfortable. "Yes, Mrs. Blackwell?" Jessica asked, her voice uncertain. "I need you to call corporate security and report a potential fraud situation," Victoria said loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. "We have someone here with what appears to be a counterfeit platinum card." Jessica looked at Maya, then at the card in Victoria's hand, then back at Maya. Something in the young woman's composed demeanor suggested this wasn't what Victoria was making it out to be. Shouldn't we scan the card first?" Jessica suggested quietly. "The computer would tell us immediately if it's valid or not." Victoria shot her a withering look. "I don't need a computer to tell me what I can see with my own eyes. Make the call, Jessica." But before Jessica could move, a voice interrupted from behind them. "Excuse me, but what exactly is happening here?" The voice belonged to David Thompson, a 45-year-old technology executive from Seattle who had been working on his laptop in one of the comfortable chairs near the windows. David had witnessed the entire interaction, and something about Victoria's behavior didn't sit right with him. He approached the desk with his phone in his hand, the camera already recording. "I'm sorry, sir, but this doesn't concern you," Victoria said, attempting to regain control of the situation. "We're just dealing with a minor security issue." "It concerns me if discrimination is happening in a public space," David replied calmly. "I've been watching this entire interaction and I haven't seen this woman do anything wrong. She presented her card, asked for service, and you've refused to provide it." Victoria's face grew redder. "Sir, I appreciate your concern, but I'm trained to spot fraudulent documents. This woman is clearly not a legitimate Platinum member." Based on what evidence, David asked, still recording. "Have you scanned the card? I don't need to scan obviously fake credentials." David looked at Maya, who had remained remarkably composed throughout the ordeal. "Ma'am, are you okay with me filming this? I think people need to see what's happening here." Maya nodded. "Thank you. I appreciate the support." Another voice joined the conversation. Linda Peterson, a 52-year-old retired teacher from Colorado, had been sitting nearby with her husband when the confrontation began. She approached the group with a mixture of curiosity and indignation. "I saw her card when she put it on the counter," Linda said to Victoria. "It looked perfectly legitimate to me. Why won't you just scan it?" Victoria was now facing 3 people instead of 1, and the balance of power was beginning to shift. But instead of backing down, she doubled down. "I don't need to explain my procedures to passengers," Victoria declared. "This is my lounge, and I decide who gets access. If you don't like it, you can file a complaint with corporate." Jessica stood frozen, caught between following her supervisor's orders and doing what she knew was right. She looked at Maya again, noting the woman's professional demeanor and obvious education. Nothing about this felt right. Maya finally spoke, her voice still calm, but with an undercurrent of steel. "Mrs. Blackwell, I'm going to ask you one more time to scan my card and verify my membership. If you refuse, I'll be forced to escalate this situation." Victoria laughed, a sharp, unpleasant sound. "Escalate to who you think corporate cares about the complaints of someone trying to scam their way into a premium lounge." "We'll see," Maya said quietly. She pulled out her phone and began scrolling through her contacts. Victoria watched with amusement, convinced that any call Maya made would only result in further embarrassment for the young woman. But Maya wasn't calling a complaint hotline. She was calling corporate headquarters directly. While Maya searched for the right number in her contacts, the true scope of who these people were began to emerge through the tension of the moment. Maya Rodriguez had grown up in East Los Angeles, the daughter of a mechanic and a school cafeteria worker. Her parents had immigrated from Mexico with nothing but hope and a willingness to work 18-hour days to give their children a better life. Maya had been the first in her family to graduate from college, earning her degree in business administration while working nights at the airport to pay her tuition. She started at Skyline Airways because it was the only company willing to hire someone with no experience but plenty of determination. Loading luggage had been backbreaking work, but it taught her every aspect of airline operations from the ground up. She learned about weight distribution, cargo manifest requirements, and the complex choreography required to turn an aircraft around in 30 minutes. Her supervisors noticed her asking questions that went beyond her job description, and they began giving her additional responsibilities. Maya's climb through the corporate ranks had been methodical and earned. Operations coordinator at 22 regional, supervisor at 24, department manager at 25. Each promotion came with new challenges and new opportunities to prove herself. She earned her MBA through night school, attended every training seminar available, and volunteered for the most difficult assignments. When the board of directors decided to add a younger voice to their decision-making process, Maya was the obvious choice. But none of that history was visible to Victoria Blackwell, who saw only what she wanted to see: a young woman of color who didn't match her preconceptions about success and wealth. Victoria's own background had given her a very different perspective on the world. She had grown up in an affluent suburb of Denver, the daughter of a lawyer and a real estate agent. Private schools, summer camps in Europe, and a college experience funded entirely by her parents had insulated her from many of life's harder realities. She genuinely believed that success was visible, that important people looked and dressed a certain way. Her 8 years at Skyline Airways had reinforced these beliefs. The platinum members she typically served were older white and dressed in expensive business attire. They spoke with confidence and authority, and they expected to be recognized and accommodated. Victoria had learned to read the signals of wealth and status, or at least she thought she had. David Thompson represented a different perspective entirely. As a technology executive who had built his company from nothing, he understood that appearances could be deceiving. He had seen too many brilliant minds dismissed because they didn't fit conventional expectations, and he had learned to look deeper than surface impressions. His decision to film the interaction wasn't impulsive. It was based on his recognition that Maya was being treated unfairly. Linda Peterson brought the wisdom of 30 years in public education, where she had learned that character mattered more than clothes, and that some of her brightest students came from the most challenging circumstances. She had seen enough injustice in her career to recognize it when it was happening in front of her. Jessica Martinez was caught in the middle, torn between her need for this job and her growing certainty that her supervisor was making a terrible mistake. As someone who had struggled to provide for her 5-year-old daughter, she understood what it felt like to be judged and dismissed. But she also knew that challenging Victoria could cost her the income she desperately needed. The stage was set for a confrontation that would reveal not just who these people were, but what they stood for when tested. Maya's phone call was about to change everything, but before she could connect with corporate headquarters, Victoria decided to escalate the situation herself. She grabbed the lounge phone and dialed airport security, her voice carrying clearly across the marble floors. "This is Victoria Blackwell, VIP lounge manager for Skyline Airways," she announced into the receiver, making sure everyone could hear. "I need security at the executive lounge immediately. We have an individual refusing to leave who appears to be using fraudulent credentials to gain access to premium facilities." David's camera captured every word. He had switched from casual recording to full documentation mode, understanding that he was witnessing something significant. "Are you getting this?" he whispered to his phone. "She just called security on a woman who presented valid credentials that she refuses to verify." Linda Peterson shook her head in disgust. "This is absolutely shameful. In 30 years of teaching, I've seen this kind of behavior before, and it's always wrong." Maya remained calm, but internally she was calculating her next moves. She had dealt with discrimination throughout her career, but never quite this blatantly and never with this many witnesses. The situation was escalating beyond what she had anticipated. Within minutes, airport security arrived in the form of Carlos Rodriguez, a 35-year-old supervisor who had been working Denver International for 12 years, and Tom Mitchell, a 29-year-old junior officer who was relatively new to the job. Carlos had seen every type of situation imaginable, and his experienced eye immediately picked up on the tension in the lounge. "What seems to be the problem here?" Carlos asked, looking between Victoria and Maya. Victoria immediately launched into her explanation. "This individual is attempting to use what appears to be fraudulent documentation to gain access to our premium lounge. When I asked her to verify her credentials through additional means, she became belligerent and refused to cooperate." "That's not true," David interjected, still filming. "I've been recording this entire interaction. This woman presented her card politely and asked for service. The manager refused to scan it and has been treating her with obvious prejudice." Carlos looked at Maya. "Ma'am, can you tell me your version of what happened?" Maya's voice remained steady and professional. "I presented my valid platinum status card and requested access to the lounge. Mrs. Blackwell refused to scan it, claiming it was fraudulent without any verification. I've been polite and patient throughout this interaction, but I'm being denied service that I'm entitled to receive." Tom Mitchell, the younger officer, looked confused. "Why don't we just scan the card and settle this?" Victoria shot him an irritated look. "Because I don't need a computer to tell me what I can see with my own eyes. This woman doesn't belong here, and I won't be intimidated into compromising our security protocols." Carlos studied the situation carefully. He noticed Maya's composed demeanor, David's continued filming, and the growing crowd of witnesses. Something about Victoria's insistence on not scanning the card struck him as odd. Mrs. Blackwell, with respect, scanning the card seems like the most straightforward way to resolve this situation. If it's fraudulent, the system will tell us immediately. "Are you questioning my professional judgment?" Victoria demanded, her voice rising. "I've been doing this job for 8 years. I know fraud when I see it." Meanwhile, more lounge guests were becoming involved. Sarah Kim, a 24-year-old marketing manager from Los Angeles, had started recording on her phone as well. "This is Sarah Kim reporting live from Denver International Airport," she whispered into her camera. "We're witnessing what appears to be blatant discrimination at the Skyline Airways VIP lounge." Jessica Martinez stood behind the counter, her discomfort obvious to anyone paying attention. She kept glancing between Victoria and the computer terminal, knowing that a simple scan would resolve everything. Finally, she found the courage to speak up. "Mrs. Blackwell, maybe I should just quickly verify the card. It would only take a second, and then we could." "Jessica." Victoria snapped. "I told you to call corporate security not to question my decisions. If you can't follow simple instructions, perhaps this job isn't right for you." The threat was clear, and Jessica stepped back. Her face flushed with embarrassment and fear. But her comment had been overheard by others, and it was becoming increasingly obvious that Victoria was actively avoiding the verification process. Carlos made his decision. "I'm going to need to see some identification from everyone involved, and I'd like to scan that card myself if that's acceptable to you, ma'am," he said to Maya. "Of course," Maya replied, handing over her driver's license along with her platinum card. Victoria's face went white. "You can't just override my authority in my own lounge." "I'm not overriding anything," Carlos replied calmly. "I'm investigating a complaint and trying to determine the facts. That's my job. As Carlos walked toward the computer terminal with Maya's cards, Victoria made a desperate attempt to regain control. Everyone needs to clear the area immediately. This is a security situation and civilians shouldn't be involved. But the witnesses weren't backing down. David continued filming. Linda had called her husband over to see what was happening, and Sarah was now live streaming the entire confrontation on multiple social media platforms. This is exactly the kind of situation people need to see, Linda declared. If we don't document these things, they keep happening. Maya pulled out her phone again. This time, she had found the number she was looking for. As Carlos approached the computer terminal with Maya's cards, Victoria made one last desperate attempt to maintain her narrative. She raised her voice to address the growing crowd of onlookers, adopting the tone of someone making an important public announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to understand what's happening here, Victoria declared, her voice echoing off the marble floors. We take security very seriously at Skyline Airways. When someone presents documentation that appears suspicious, we have protocols in place to protect our legitimate customers. David lowered his camera for a moment and stared at her in disbelief. Are you seriously trying to justify this right now? You haven't even verified her card. I don't need to verify obviously fraudulent documents, Victoria replied, doubling down on her position. Look at her. Does she look like someone who can afford a platinum membership that costs $15,000 annually? A collective gasp rose from the crowd. Even Tom Mitchell, the junior security officer, looked shocked at Victoria's blatant statement. Did she just say what I think she said? Sarah whispered into her phone camera, making sure her live stream captured the moment. Maya stood perfectly still, her face composed but her eyes flashing with controlled anger. Mrs. Blackwell, I want to make sure I understand you correctly. Are you saying that my appearance is the basis for your refusal to provide me with service? Victoria realized she had gone too far, but her pride wouldn't let her back down. I'm saying that when someone doesn't fit the typical profile of our premium customers, additional verification is required. And what exactly is that typical profile Linda Peterson demanded, stepping closer to the confrontation? Because I'd really like to hear you explain that. Victoria's face flushed deeper red. I think everyone here knows what I mean. No, we don't, David said firmly. Please explain exactly what you mean. The silence that followed was deafening. Victoria looked around at the faces staring back at her, realizing that she had just admitted to racial profiling in front of multiple witnesses and cameras. But instead of apologizing or backing down, she decided to double down even further. Fine, Victoria said, her voice shaking with anger and desperation. If you want me to be specific, I will be. Our platinum members are typically business professionals who dress appropriately for premium travel. They carry themselves with the confidence that comes from success, and they understand the expectations that come with exclusive access. Maya stepped forward, her voice deadly calm. And you've determined that I don't meet those standards based on what exactly? Based on the fact that you're dressed like you're going to a college campus, not a business meeting. Based on the fact that you're arguing with staff instead of understanding our procedures. Based on the fact that you clearly don't understand how things work in environments like this. The crowd was now openly hostile to Victoria. Several people were shaking their heads, and Linda Peterson looked like she was ready to explode with righteous indignation. Carlos finally reached the computer terminal and began scanning Maya's platinum card. As the system processed the information, Victoria continued her misguided attempt to justify her actions. I've seen this scam before, she announced to the crowd. People obtain expired or stolen cards and try to use them for access to premium services. They count on staff being too polite or too afraid of accusations to properly verify credentials. So your solution is to refuse verification altogether? David asked, his camera capturing every word. My solution is to use common sense and professional experience to protect the integrity of our services. Sarah Kim, still live streaming, decided to engage directly. Ma'am, I'm streaming this live to about 10,000 people right now. Would you like to clarify your position for them? Victoria looked at the camera with a mixture of defiance and growing panic. I stand by my professional judgment. I won't be bullied into compromising security protocols by social media pressure. But then Carlos called out from the computer terminal, and his voice carried across the entire lounge. Ma'am, could you come over here, please? Maya walked calmly to the terminal, followed by the crowd of witnesses. Victoria reluctantly joined them, her confidence beginning to waver as she saw Carlos's expression. Is there a problem with the card? Victoria asked hopefully. Carlos looked at the screen, then at Maya, then at Victoria. His expression was unreadable, but there was something in his eyes that suggested the situation had just become much more complicated. Mrs. Blackwell, I need to ask you a question, and I need you to answer honestly. Did you look at this woman and decide she didn't belong here before you even attempted to verify her credentials? Victoria's mouth opened and closed without words coming out. The question hung in the air like an accusation, which of course it was. Maya's phone buzzed with an incoming call. She looked at the screen and her expression changed slightly. Excuse me. I need to take this call. It's urgent. She answered the phone, speaking quietly, but not so quietly that the microphones in David's and Sarah's cameras couldn't pick up her words. Elena. Yes, I got your message. The board meeting has been moved up by 2 hours. That's going to be tight. She paused, listening. Yes, I'm still at the airport. I'm dealing with the situation, but it should be resolved shortly. Victoria's attention sharpened at the mention of a board meeting. That sounded more corporate than she had expected. Maya stepped slightly away from the crowd to take her call, but her voice remained audible to those nearby. The witnesses continued filming, and Victoria strained to listen, her earlier confidence beginning to crack. Elena, can you push the quarterly review back 30 minutes? Maya spoke into her phone. I need time to review the operational efficiency reports before the presentation. She paused, listening to the response. Yes, I know the board members are waiting, but these numbers need to be perfect. David exchanged glances with Linda, both recognizing that this wasn't the conversation of someone trying to scam her way into a lounge. Sarah's live stream audience was growing rapidly, with comments flooding in about the unfolding drama. Victoria moved closer, trying to overhear more of the conversation. Jessica Martinez watched from behind the counter, a growing sense of dread building in her stomach as she began to suspect that her supervisor had made a catastrophic error. Tell James I'll review the Denver hub proposal during the flight, Maya continued. And make sure the customer satisfaction metrics are included in my briefing materials. The board will want to see how our service improvements are measuring up to passenger expectations. Carlos had finished reviewing Maya's information on the computer, and his expression had shifted from confusion to concern. He looked at Victoria with something approaching pity. Mrs. Blackwell, I think you need to see this. But Victoria was fixated on Maya's phone conversation, pieces of a very uncomfortable puzzle beginning to form in her mind. Elena also confirmed that the employee satisfaction survey results are ready for presentation. We discussed implementing new training programs to address customer service issues, and I want to show the board that we're taking action. The words new training programs and customer service issues hit Victoria like physical blows. This wasn't making sense. People who scammed their way into airport lounges didn't talk about board meetings and quarterly reports. Jessica Martinez had heard enough. She quietly moved to another computer terminal and pulled up Maya's membership information herself. What she saw on the screen made her face go completely white. Oh my God, she whispered. Victoria spun around. Jessica, what are you doing? I told you not to. She stopped speaking when she saw Jessica's expression. Then she looked at the computer screen, and her entire world shifted on its axis. The profile showed Maya Rodriguez, Platinum Elite member since 2019, with a company designation that made Victoria's blood run cold. Skyline Airways, Board of Directors, Senior Director of Operations. Victoria grabbed the edge of the counter to steady herself. That can't be right. The system must be wrong. Carlos approached from behind. Mrs. Blackwell, I need to speak with you privately. But Maya was finishing her call and her final words were audible to everyone in the immediate area. Elena also scheduled a follow-up meeting with HR about the discrimination training program we discussed. After today's experience, I think we need to accelerate that timeline. She paused. What do you mean what experience? I'm dealing with a situation right now that's going to require some serious policy review. Maya ended the call and turned back to the group. Her expression was calm, but there was something different in her eyes now. Something that suggested the dynamic of the situation was about to change dramatically. I apologize for the interruption, Maya said to Carlos. Corporate business. You mentioned you wanted to show Mrs. Blackwell something. Victoria was staring at the computer screen as if she could change what it said through sheer force of will. The membership profile was clear. Maya Rodriguez was not only a legitimate platinum member, she was a senior executive of the airline itself. This has to be a mistake, Victoria said desperately. The computer must be wrong. People don't just... She gestured helplessly at Maya. Board members don't dress like... She couldn't finish the sentence because finishing it would mean admitting what everyone already knew. She had made her decision based entirely on Maya's appearance and race. David's camera captured everything, and Sarah's live stream was now being watched by over 50,000 people. The comments section was exploding with outrage and support for Maya. Linda Peterson stepped forward, her voice sharp with indignation. Mrs. Blackwell, I think you owe this young lady an apology. And not just an apology. You owe her a complete explanation of why you refused to do your basic job. Victoria looked around desperately, as if searching for an escape route. I was following security protocols. I couldn't have known. You could have known if you had scanned her card like she asked you to do repeatedly. Carlos interrupted. Ma'am, he said to Maya, I owe you a sincere apology on behalf of airport security. We should have insisted on proper verification from the beginning. Maya nodded graciously. Thank you, Carlos. I appreciate that. She turned to Victoria, and when she spoke, her voice carried a new authority that seemed to fill the entire lounge. Mrs. Blackwell, I think we need to have a conversation about what just happened here. But first, I need to make another phone call. While Maya prepared to make what would prove to be a life-changing phone call, the digital world was already exploding with coverage of the confrontation. Sarah Kim's live stream had reached over 100,000 viewers with shares and reposts spreading across every major social media platform. This is unbelievable, you guys, Sarah whispered to her camera. We're watching a Skyline Airways board member being discriminated against by the airline's own employee. The irony is just... I can't even... David had switched from filming to uploading clips to his LinkedIn profile with commentary that was being shared by his network of technology executives. Witnessing blatant discrimination at Denver International Airport, he wrote. This is exactly why we still need to have conversations about unconscious bias and corporate training. The hashtag Skyline accountability began trending within minutes as viewers shared the videos and added their own commentary. People who had experienced similar treatment came forward with their stories, creating a virtual avalanche of testimonies about discrimination in air travel. Linda Peterson had called her daughter, a civil rights attorney in Colorado Springs, who was now driving to the airport to potentially provide legal support. Mom, keep documenting everything her daughter had advised. Get names, badge numbers, and make sure those videos are saved to multiple platforms. Jessica Martinez was frantically trying to figure out how to minimize the damage to Skyline Airways' reputation, but she was also secretly relieved that Victoria's behavior was finally being exposed. She had witnessed similar incidents over the past 6 months, though never quite this extreme. Mrs. Blackwell, Jessica said quietly, maybe we should call corporate communications. This is getting pretty big online. Victoria was still staring at the computer screen as if the information might change if she looked at it long enough. This can't be real. Board members they don't look like... She gestured weakly at Maya. Like what Linda Peterson demanded. Finish that sentence. What don't board members look like? The crowd of witnesses had grown to include other travelers who had been drawn by the commotion. A pilot in uniform had stopped to see what was happening, and several flight attendants on their break had gathered at the edge of the group. Captain Robert Hayes, a 20-year veteran of Skyline Airways, recognized Maya from corporate functions, and his face went completely white when he realized what he was witnessing. "Oh no," he muttered. "Oh, this is bad. This is really, really bad." One of the flight attendants, Maria Gonzalez, had worked with Maya on several passenger service initiatives and immediately understood the magnitude of what was happening. She quietly approached Carlos. "Sir, I think you need to know that the woman being harassed is Maya Rodriguez. She's on the airline's board of directors, and she's been leading efforts to improve customer service training across the entire company." Carlos closed his eyes briefly, realizing that this incident was about to become a company-wide crisis. How many people know who she is? By now, probably thousands, thanks to social media. And Sir Ms. Rodriguez is scheduled to present new anti-discrimination policies to the board next week. The timing of this couldn't be worse for the company. Meanwhile, Maya had found the number she was looking for in her contacts. She dialed, and when the call connected, she spoke clearly enough for everyone nearby to hear. "James. It's Maya. I need you to connect me with crisis management immediately. We have a code red situation at Denver International, and it's already going viral." She paused, listening. "Yes, I'm the subject of the incident. I'm being denied service at our own VIP lounge by an employee who refuses to verify my credentials." Victoria's legs almost gave out when she heard Maya identify herself by name to someone who was clearly a corporate executive. The phone conversation continued with Maya providing a calm, professional summary of events while cameras captured every word. "James, I need corporate security here within the hour, and I need the communications team to start monitoring social media mentions. This is already trending on multiple platforms." Another pause. "Yes, I'm fine. No, I'm not injured. But this is exactly the kind of incident that the board has been discussing in terms of company culture and training needs." By now, Victoria was visibly shaking. The full magnitude of her mistake was beginning to dawn on her, and she could see her career evaporating in real time. Despite the mounting evidence that she had made a catastrophic error, Victoria made one final desperate attempt to assert her authority. Perhaps it was panic. Perhaps it was an inability to accept reality. But instead of backing down and apologizing, she decided to escalate even further. "I don't care who you think you are," Victoria announced loudly, her voice carrying across the entire lounge. "I don't care what your friends on the phone are telling you. I am the manager of this lounge, and I make the decisions about who gets access." The statement was so tone-deaf, so completely disconnected from reality, that several witnesses actually gasped out loud. Sarah's live-stream chat exploded with incredulous comments as viewers watched a Skyline Airways employee double down on discriminating against her own board member. Maya ended her call and turned to face Victoria with an expression of calm professionalism that somehow managed to be more intimidating than any show of anger could have been. "Mrs. Blackwell, I'm going to give you one final opportunity to handle this situation appropriately. You have made a significant error in judgment, but there's still time to address it professionally." Victoria's response revealed just how far removed from reality she had become. "I don't take orders from people who don't belong here. This lounge is for Skyline Airways' most valuable customers, not for people trying to scam their way in with fake credentials." David Thompson stopped recording for a moment, staring at Victoria in amazement. "Ma'am, the computer literally shows that she's a board member. We've all seen it. How are you still claiming she doesn't belong here? Computers can be hacked, Victoria replied desperately. People can create fake profiles. I use my eyes and my experience, and my eyes tell me that this woman is not who she claims to be. Carlos stepped forward, his voice firm with authority. Mrs. Blackwell, I'm ordering you to step away from the counter and allow this passenger access to the lounge immediately. You have no authority here, Victoria snapped. This is airline property, not airport property. I answer to Skyline Airways management, not to airport security. It was at this moment that Captain Robert Hayes decided he could no longer remain silent. He approached the group, his uniform immediately commanding attention. Mrs. Blackwell, he said quietly, I'm Captain Robert Hayes. I've been flying for Skyline Airways for 20 years, and I'm telling you right now that you need to stop this immediately. Victoria turned to him with relief, assuming she finally had an ally. Captain Hayes, thank you. Please explain to these people that I have the authority to deny access to anyone whose credentials I cannot verify. Captain Hayes looked at her with something approaching pity. Mrs. Blackwell, the woman you're harassing is Maya Rodriguez. She's a member of our board of directors, and she's been working on customer service initiatives for the past 2 years. What you're doing right now is going to result in your immediate termination. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Victoria stared at Captain Hayes, then at Maya, then at the computer screen that still displayed Maya's executive credentials. That's impossible, she whispered. Mrs. Blackwell, Maya said gently, this is your last chance to handle this with dignity. Apologize, step aside, and we can discuss this situation privately with corporate representatives. But Victoria was beyond rational thought. The humiliation, the public nature of her mistake, and the presence of cameras had pushed her past the point of reasonable behavior. No, she said firmly. I don't care what that computer says. I don't care what anyone says. I know what I see, and I know this woman doesn't belong in this lounge. She moved to the computer terminal and began typing rapidly. I'm documenting this entire incident for corporate security. Attempted fraud, creation of false documentation, harassment of staff, disruption of premium service operations. Jessica Martinez watched in horror as her supervisor created an official incident report that would later be used as evidence of her discriminatory behavior. Mrs. Blackwell, please don't file that report, Jessica pleaded. You're making this so much worse. I'm doing my job, Victoria replied, her voice taking on a manic edge. Someone has to maintain standards around here. Maya pulled out her phone again, and this time when she dialed, she put the call on speakerphone so everyone could hear. The voice that answered was crisp and professional. Skyline Airways, Executive Office. This is James Patterson, Chief of Staff to the Board of Directors. The speaker phone call created a moment of absolute silence in the lounge, as if someone had pressed a pause button on the entire confrontation. Even Victoria stopped typing her incident report, her fingers frozen above the keyboard as the implications of what she was hearing began to sink in. James, this is Maya Rodriguez, Maya said calmly into the phone. I'm at the Denver VIP lounge and I need corporate security here immediately. I'm being denied service by an employee who refuses to verify my credentials and is now filing false reports about attempted fraud. James Patterson's voice carried clearly through the phone speaker, reaching every witness in the area. Director Rodriguez. I understand. Can you give me the employee's name and badge number? Maya looked directly at Victoria. The employee is Victoria Blackwell Lounge Manager badge number. She looked at Victoria's name tag. 7429. Mrs. Blackwell. James Patterson's voice continued through the speaker. This is the Chief of Staff to the Board of Directors. You are currently harassing a board member of Skyline Airways. Do you understand the situation you're in? Victoria's face had gone from red to completely white. She stared at the phone as if it were a venomous snake. This has to be fake, she stammered. People don't just call the chief of staff. Board members don't. They don't dress like... She gestured weakly at Maya's casual attire, Mrs. Blackwell. James Patterson's voice came through the speaker with icy professionalism. Director Rodriguez is returning from emergency board meetings in Chicago, where we discussed, among other things, customer service improvements and anti-discrimination training. Your behavior today represents exactly the kind of problem we're working to eliminate. David Thompson's camera captured every word, and Sarah Kim's live stream had now reached over 200,000 viewers. The comment section was moving too fast to read, with people sharing their own stories of discrimination and expressing outrage at what they were witnessing. Carlos stepped closer to the phone. Mr. Patterson, this is Carlos Rodriguez, Airport Security Supervisor. We have multiple witnesses here, and the entire incident has been recorded by several passengers. Mrs. Blackwell has repeatedly refused to verify Ms. Rodriguez's credentials and has made statements suggesting racial bias. I have not, Victoria protested, but her voice lacked conviction. I was following security protocols. Linda Peterson had heard enough. She stepped forward, her voice sharp with decades of teaching authority. Young lady, I've been watching this entire incident, and you have consistently treated this woman differently from how you would treat any white passenger. We've all seen it, and it's been recorded for posterity. Captain Hayes nodded in agreement. Mrs. Blackwell, in 20 years with this airline, I've never seen such a blatant example of discriminatory behavior. You've brought shame on the entire company. Maria Gonzalez, the flight attendant who had recognized Maya, approached the group. Mr. Patterson, this is Maria Gonzalez, senior flight attendant. I've worked with Director Rodriguez on multiple customer service initiatives. She's been leading the effort to improve training and eliminate exactly this kind of behavior from our operations. The irony was devastating. Victoria had been discriminating against the very person who was working to prevent discrimination at their airline. Jessica Martinez finally found her voice. Mr. Patterson, this is Jessica Martinez, Assistant Lounge Manager. I tried to suggest that we scan Director Rodriguez's card multiple times, but Mrs. Blackwell refused and threatened my job when I questioned her decisions. Victoria spun around to face Jessica, betrayal written across her face. How dare you! I gave you a job when no one else would hire you. You gave me a job and then you asked me to participate in discrimination, Jessica replied, her voice steady despite her obvious nervousness. I have a daughter to think about, and I won't teach her that staying quiet about injustice is acceptable. Through the phone speaker, James Patterson's voice cut through the tension. Mrs. Blackwell, you are suspended from duty effective immediately. Please surrender your badge and access cards to airport security. Corporate representatives will arrive within the hour to conduct a full investigation. Victoria looked around desperately as if searching for someone who would support her position, but every face in the crowd showed disgust, disappointment, or pity. Even Tom Mitchell, the junior security officer who had remained mostly silent, was shaking his head in disbelief. This isn't fair, Victoria said, her voice breaking. I was doing my job. I was protecting the company. People try to scam their way into premium services all the time. Maya stepped forward, her voice gentle but firm. Mrs. Blackwell scanning my card would have taken 30 seconds. Instead, you chose to spend 30 minutes humiliating me based on your assumptions about what a successful person looks like. That wasn't protecting the company. That was damaging it. The crowd began to disperse as the immediate drama wound down, but many people remained to see the resolution. Sarah continued her live stream, providing commentary for her massive audience. This is just incredible, you guys. We've witnessed someone destroy their own career through prejudice and ignorance, and the grace that Director Rodriguez has shown throughout this entire ordeal, I honestly don't know if I could have maintained that level of composure. With corporate security on the way and the incident now documented from multiple angles, Maya made a decision that would define not just the immediate resolution of the situation, but the long-term impact on company policy and culture. Mrs. Blackwell. Maya said, her voice carrying the authority of her position, but also an unexpected note of compassion. I want you to understand something important. This isn't just about what happened to me today. This is about every passenger who has been treated poorly because someone made assumptions about who they are or what they deserve. Victoria stood frozen, her badge and access cards clutched in her trembling hands. The fight had gone out of her, completely replaced by a growing understanding of the magnitude of her mistake. I want to give you one opportunity to explain your actions. Maya continued. Not to justify them, but to help us understand how this happened so we can prevent it from happening again. The offer was unexpected, and Victoria struggled to respond. Around them, the witnesses waited in silence, phones still recording, capturing every moment of what had become an impromptu lesson in accountability and grace under pressure. I thought... Victoria began, then stopped. How could she explain that she had seen a young black woman in casual clothes and immediately assumed she didn't belong? How could she admit that, despite all her training, despite company policies, she had let her prejudices override her professionalism? Take your time, Maya encouraged. But understand that whatever you say now will be part of the official record, and it will help determine how the company addresses this situation. David Thompson lowered his camera slightly, recognizing that the moment had shifted from documentation of discrimination to something deeper, a potential teachable moment about bias assumptions and the courage to confront uncomfortable truths. Victoria looked at Maya, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time during the entire encounter. She saw the intelligence in her eyes, the calm professionalism in her demeanor, the patience she had shown even when being publicly humiliated. I made assumptions, Victoria said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. I saw you and I decided you didn't fit what I thought our customers should look like. I was wrong. It was a start, but Maya knew it wasn't enough. Not for the witnesses who had been traumatized by what they'd seen. Not for the millions of people who would watch the videos online, and not for the employees of Skyline Airways who needed to understand that discrimination would have serious consequences. Mrs. Blackwell, discrimination isn't just wrong because it hurts individuals. It's wrong because it reveals a fundamental failure to see people as human beings worthy of dignity and respect. Your assumptions about me weren't just incorrect. They were harmful to every person of color who might seek service from this company. The words hung in the air, and for the first time, Victoria seemed to truly understand what she had done. She wasn't just being disciplined for a policy violation. She was being held accountable for perpetuating a pattern of prejudice that affected countless people. Maya turned to address the cameras and the crowd of witnesses. I want everyone here to understand that what happened today can't be ignored or forgotten, but it also can't just be about punishment. We have to use this moment to create real change. With that statement, Maya Rodriguez transformed from victim to leader, using her own humiliation as a catalyst for broader progress. Corporate security arrived with an efficiency that demonstrated just how seriously Skyline Airways was taking the situation. 3 executives in dark suits approached the lounge led by James Patterson himself, a man whose presence at an airport incident suggested that this had already escalated to the highest levels of company management. Director Rodriguez James Patterson said, extending his hand respectfully, I apologize profusely for what you've experienced today. This is absolutely unacceptable. Maya shook his hand calmly. Thank you for coming, James. I think this incident provides us with an opportunity to examine some serious gaps in our customer service training. The crowd of witnesses watched as the power dynamic became crystal clear. Victoria Blackwell, who had been so certain of her authority just an hour earlier, now stood off to the side like a child waiting to be disciplined by the principal. Mrs. Blackwell. James Patterson addressed her directly, his voice carrying the weight of corporate authority. You've been suspended pending a full investigation, but I want to understand your thought process. Can you explain why you repeatedly refused to verify Director Rodriguez's credentials? Victoria looked around at the cameras still recording at the faces of the witnesses who had watched her humiliation unfold, and at Maya Rodriguez, who had maintained her dignity throughout the entire ordeal. I... I made assumptions, Victoria admitted, her voice shaking. I saw her and she didn't look like what I expected our premium customers to look like. I thought she was trying to scam her way into the lounge. The admission was devastating in its honesty. James Patterson's expression showed a mixture of disappointment and professional calculation as he processed the implications of what Victoria had just said on camera in front of witnesses and potentially in front of millions of online viewers. Mrs. Blackwell, are you saying that you denied service to a paying customer based on her appearance and race? I didn't mean it that way, Victoria protested weakly. I was trying to protect the company's interests. I was following my training. What training taught you to refuse to scan a customer's valid credentials? Maya asked, her voice still calm but with an edge of steel. What training taught you to make assumptions about people's financial capabilities based on their appearance? David Thompson continued recording, recognizing that this exchange would likely become a case study in corporate discrimination cases for years to come. Sarah Kim's live stream had reached over 500,000 viewers, with major news outlets now picking up the story in real time. Dr. Angela Martinez, Skyline Airways head of human resources, stepped forward from the corporate security team. She had been monitoring the social media coverage during her drive to the airport and understood that this incident was already a public relations catastrophe. Mrs. Blackwell, I need to inform you that your employment with Skyline Airways is terminated effective immediately. Your actions today violated company policy, federal anti-discrimination laws, and basic human decency. Victoria's legs nearly gave out. She had worked for this airline for 8 years, had built her entire identity around her role as a gatekeeper to exclusive services. Now it was all gone destroyed by her own prejudices and poor judgment. Please, Victoria whispered, I have a mortgage car payments. I need this job. Maya stepped forward, and for a moment the witnesses thought she might show mercy. Instead, she delivered a lesson in leadership that would be remembered long after the incident was forgotten. Mrs. Blackwell, consequences aren't punishment. They're learning opportunities. Not just for you, but for everyone watching. Every person who sees what happened here today will understand that discrimination has a real cost. Jessica Martinez, who had been standing quietly behind the counter, finally stepped forward. Mr. Patterson, I want to go on record as saying that I tried to suggest we verify Director Rodriguez's credentials. Mrs. Blackwell threatened my job when I questioned her decisions. Thank you, Jessica, Dr. Martinez replied. Your willingness to speak up shows exactly the kind of integrity we want to see from our employees. You're being promoted to interim lounge manager effective immediately. The crowd erupted in spontaneous applause for Jessica, recognizing her courage in standing up to her supervisor, despite the risk to her own employment. Captain Hayes approached Maya with obvious respect. Director Rodriguez, on behalf of all Skyline Airways crew members who believe in treating passengers with dignity, I want to apologize for what you experienced today. Maya shook his hand warmly. Thank you, Captain Hayes. This incident will help us improve training for everyone. The transformation was swift and visible. Within minutes of the corporate team's arrival, the entire atmosphere of the lounge changed from one of tension and conflict to one of professional accountability and resolution. Security officers escorted Victoria to a private office to collect her personal belongings under supervision. Her access badges were confiscated, her locker was cleaned out, and her company-issued equipment was returned to the airline. The process was efficient, but not cruel, a professional termination that demonstrated how seriously the company was taking the incident. Mrs. Blackwell, Dr. Martinez explained as Victoria gathered her things, You'll receive your final paycheck and COBRA information within 2 weeks. However, given the nature of your termination, you will not be eligible for rehire with Skyline Airways or any of our partner companies. Victoria nodded mutely, the full weight of her situation beginning to sink in. 8 years of employment history gone. References from airline industry contacts unusable. Her reputation in the field destroyed by 30 minutes of documented discrimination. Meanwhile, Maya was addressing the crowd of witnesses who had remained to see the resolution of the situation. Many of them had been traumatized by watching such blatant discrimination, and she wanted to ensure they understood that their support had been meaningful. "I want to thank everyone who stood up for what was right today," Maya said, her voice carrying to every corner of the lounge. "David, Sarah, Linda, and everyone else who refused to let this behavior go unchallenged. You made the difference. Change happens when good people refuse to stay silent." David Thompson approached her with his business card. "Director Rodriguez, I'd like to send you the full video file from my recording. This needs to be preserved as evidence, but it also needs to be seen by people who still don't believe that discrimination like this happens." Sarah Kim ended her live stream with a final message to her massive audience. "This is what accountability looks like, everyone. This is what happens when discrimination meets consequences. And this is what grace under pressure looks like when someone like Director Rodriguez shows us how to respond to hate with dignity." Linda Peterson hugged Maya warmly. "Honey, I've been watching people for 70 years, and I've never seen anyone handle an impossible situation with more class than you just did. You turned a moment of ugliness into a lesson in leadership." Carlos Rodriguez, the security supervisor, shook Maya's hand with obvious respect. "Ma'am, I'm sorry it took us so long to understand what was really happening here. We'll be reviewing our protocols to make sure this doesn't happen again." "Carlos, you did your job professionally once you understood the situation," Maya replied graciously. "That's all any of us can ask for. But perhaps the most important conversation was happening quietly in the corner where Jessica Martinez was speaking with Dr. Martinez about the culture that had allowed Victoria's behavior to go unchecked for so long. "Dr. Martinez, I need to tell you that this wasn't an isolated incident," Jessica said quietly. "Mrs. Blackwell has made similar assumptions about other passengers, especially people of color and younger travelers. I should have reported it sooner, but I was afraid of losing my job." Jessica: "That fear is exactly why we need to change our reporting culture," Dr. Martinez replied. "No employee should ever be afraid to speak up about discrimination or unprofessional behavior. We're going to implement new protections for whistleblowers and new training programs to prevent incidents like this." The ripple effects were already spreading beyond the airport. Maya's assistant, Elena Rodriguez, had been monitoring social media and coordinating with the company's crisis management team. The hashtag Skyline Accountability was trending globally, with millions of people sharing the videos and expressing outrage at Victoria's behavior. Major news outlets were picking up the story with headlines like "Airline Executive Discriminated Against by Own Employee" and "Viral Video Shows Grace Under Pressure in Face of Racism." The incident was becoming a teachable moment on a massive scale. Victoria Blackwell's professional life unraveled with the same speed and finality as the ticket she had once torn up in a display of misguided authority. As she gathered her personal belongings under security supervision, the full magnitude of her situation became clear, not just to her, but to everyone watching. "Mrs. Blackwell," Dr. Martinez said as Victoria packed her few personal items into a small cardboard box. "I want you to understand that this termination will be reported to industry databases. Your behavior today will follow you to any future employment applications in customer service or hospitality." The words hit Victoria like physical blows. She had destroyed not just her current job, but her entire career trajectory in a single afternoon. The airline industry was smaller than most people realized, and news of her discrimination incident would spread quickly through professional networks. "What am I supposed to do?" Victoria asked, her voice breaking. "This is the only industry I know. These are the only skills I have." Maya, who had been speaking with other witnesses, overheard the question and approached the conversation with the same measured professionalism she had maintained throughout the entire ordeal. Mrs. Blackwell, you have an opportunity now to learn from this experience and become someone who fights against discrimination instead of perpetuating it," Maya said, gently but firmly. "Your next chapter doesn't have to be defined by your worst moment, but it does have to acknowledge it." Victoria looked up at Maya with a mixture of shame and confusion. "How can you even speak to me after what I did to you?" "Because holding on to anger would hurt me more than it would hurt you," Maya replied. "But that doesn't mean there won't be consequences. Actions have results, and you're experiencing those results now." David Thompson, who had been documenting the aftermath, lowered his camera as Victoria was escorted toward the exit. The moment felt too personal, too raw to be captured on video. But Sarah Kim continued her live coverage, explaining to her audience the importance of seeing consequences through to their conclusion. "This is the hardest part to watch, honestly," Sarah whispered to her camera, "seeing someone's career end in real time. But it's also necessary. Victoria Blackwell made choices that hurt people, and those choices had to have consequences." As Victoria reached the lounge exit, she turned back one final time to look at Maya Rodriguez, who was now speaking with reporters who had arrived to cover the story. Maya stood tall and composed, answering questions about company policy and discrimination prevention with the authority and grace that Victoria should have recognized from the beginning. "I don't understand," Victoria said to no one in particular. "How was I supposed to know Jessica Martinez, her former assistant, heard the comment and couldn't let it pass without response?" "Mrs. Blackwell, you were supposed to know because she showed you her credentials and asked you to verify them. You were supposed to know because treating all customers with respect is literally your job. You chose not to know because it was easier to make assumptions." The words stung because they were true. Victoria had been given every opportunity to handle the situation professionally, and she had chosen prejudice over procedure at every turn. Captain Hayes, who had been watching the entire resolution unfold, approached Victoria as security prepared to escort her from the building. "Mrs. Blackwell, I want you to understand something. What happened here today wasn't just about one incident. Your behavior reflected poorly on every employee of this airline who works hard to serve passengers with dignity and respect." Victoria nodded numbly. She understood now that her actions had had consequences far beyond her own career. The viral videos would reflect on Skyline Airways, potentially affecting the company's reputation and the livelihoods of thousands of innocent employees. As the security escort guided her toward the exit, Victoria passed the computer terminal where Maya's platinum status was still displayed on the screen. The evidence of her mistake glowed in digital clarity, a reminder that the truth had been available with a simple scan from the very beginning. "Wait," Victoria said, suddenly stopping just before the exit. She turned to face the lounge one last time, where Maya was still speaking with corporate executives and media representatives. Director Rodriguez Victoria called out across the space, "I want to say something publicly on camera." Maya looked up, surprised by the interruption. The entire lounge fell silent as Victoria walked back into the center of the space, facing the cameras and witnesses who had documented her downfall. "I was wrong," Victoria said, her voice shaking but clear. "I discriminated against Director Rodriguez based on her appearance and my own prejudices. I violated company policy, federal law, and basic human decency. And I'm sorry." The apology hung in the air, raw and honest. It wouldn't undo the damage or save Victoria's career, but it was the first moment of genuine accountability she had shown since the incident began. Maya nodded respectfully. "Thank you for saying that, Mrs. Blackwell. I hope you'll use this experience to become someone who fights against discrimination instead of perpetuating it." With that final exchange, Victoria Blackwell walked out of the Skyline Airways VIP lounge and out of the airline industry forever. The videos of Victoria's discrimination and subsequent termination spread across the internet, with the speed and force of a digital wildfire. Within 6 hours of the incident, Skyline. Accountability had been mentioned over 2 million times across all major social media platforms, making it one of the top trending topics worldwide. Major news outlets scrambled to cover the story, with CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC all running segments about the incident during their primetime programming. The story had everything that captured public attention: clear-cut discrimination, real-time consequences, and a protagonist who had responded to hatred with dignity and grace. This is Anderson Cooper, 360. Tonight we're looking at a viral incident that occurred at Denver International Airport, where an airline executive was discriminated against by her own company's employee. The incident was captured on video by multiple witnesses and has sparked conversations about bias, accountability, and leadership in corporate America. The video clips showed Maya's calm professionalism contrasted with Victoria's increasingly desperate attempts to justify her discrimination. Commentary focused on Maya's response, with leadership experts praising her ability to turn a moment of personal humiliation into a teachable moment for millions. Dr. Angela Martinez fielded dozens of interview requests from major media outlets, using each opportunity to discuss Skyline Airways' commitment to eliminating discrimination and improving customer service training. What you saw in that lounge represents exactly the kind of behavior we're working to eliminate from our company culture, Dr. Martinez told CNN's Jim Acosta. Director Rodriguez's response demonstrated the kind of leadership and grace under pressure that we want to see from all our employees. The incident also sparked broader conversations about discrimination in the travel industry. Passengers came forward with their own stories of being profiled or mistreated by airline staff, creating a national dialogue about bias and accountability in customer service. Linda Peterson, the retired teacher who had witnessed the incident, found herself giving interviews about the importance of bystander intervention. "I couldn't just sit there and watch that young woman be treated so poorly," she told a local news station. "Sometimes you have to stand up for what's right even when it's uncomfortable." David Thompson's LinkedIn post about the incident received over 100,000 likes and shares, with business leaders across the country using his account of the incident to discuss unconscious bias in their own organizations. "This is exactly why diversity training isn't enough," wrote one Fortune 500 CEO in response to David's post. "We need accountability mechanisms and consequences that make it clear that discrimination will not be tolerated." Sarah Kim's live stream footage became the definitive record of the incident, viewed over 5 million times in the first 24 hours. Her commentary about the importance of documenting discrimination resonated with younger audiences who had grown up in the age of viral justice. But perhaps the most powerful response came from Skyline Airways employees themselves. Flight attendants, pilots, gate agents, and customer service representatives used social media to distance themselves from Victoria's behavior and express support for Maya Rodriguez's leadership. "Maya Rodriguez has been leading efforts to improve our customer service training for years," wrote Captain Lisa Thompson on her personal Twitter account. "Victoria Blackwell's behavior doesn't represent the values of the employees who are working to make air travel better for everyone." The incident also sparked immediate policy discussions in the airline industry. Other major carriers announced reviews of their customer service protocols, and several companies implemented new training programs specifically designed to address unconscious bias and discrimination. Within 48 hours of the incident, Maya Rodriguez and Victoria Blackwell had become household names representing opposite approaches to power, prejudice, and accountability. The story had transcended its origins as a single incident of discrimination to become a broader symbol of the need for change in corporate culture and customer service. Maya Rodriguez stood at a podium in Skyline Airways corporate headquarters, addressing a room full of media representatives, employee union leaders, and company executives. The press conference had been scheduled quickly in response to the overwhelming public interest in the Denver airport incident and its aftermath. "Thank you all for being here today. Maya began, her voice carrying the same calm authority that had defined her response to Victoria Blackwell's discrimination. The incident at Denver International Airport has provided us with an opportunity to examine our policies, our training, and our commitment to treating every passenger with dignity and respect. Behind her, a large screen displayed the new initiatives that Skyline Airways would be implementing in response to the incident. The scope was comprehensive, addressing not just discrimination prevention, but broader customer service culture changes. Effective immediately. Skyline Airways is implementing the Dignity First customer service program, Maya announced. Every employee who interacts with passengers will receive enhanced training focused on unconscious bias, recognition, de-escalation techniques, and inclusive service standards. The program went far beyond typical corporate diversity training. It included scenario-based learning, regular assessment, and refresher courses, and clear consequences for employees who failed to meet the new standards. We're also establishing a passenger advocacy office. Maya continued, staffed by independent ombudsmen who will investigate complaints of discrimination or unfair treatment. Passengers will have multiple channels to report incidents, and every complaint will be investigated thoroughly. Dr. Angela Martinez joined Maya at the podium to outline the accountability measures that would prevent future incidents like the Victoria Blackwell situation. No employee will ever again be able to refuse basic verification procedures based on personal assumptions, Dr. Martinez announced. We're implementing automated monitoring that will flag any deviation from standard protocols, and managers will be held personally responsible for ensuring that all employees follow proper procedures. The new policies also included protections for employees like Jessica Martinez, who had tried to intervene but faced threats to her job security. We're establishing a whistleblower protection program with guaranteed anonymity and anti-retaliation measures, Dr. Martinez explained. Employees who report discrimination or unprofessional behavior will be protected and in some cases rewarded for their courage in speaking up. Maya returned to the microphone to address the broader implications of the changes. These improvements aren't just about preventing discrimination, she said. They're about creating a culture where every passenger feels welcomed, respected, and valued. Air travel should be accessible to everyone who can afford it, regardless of how they look, how they dress, or what assumptions others might make about them. The announcement included specific metrics and timelines for implementation. All customer-facing employees would complete the new training within 90 days. The Passenger Advocacy Office would be operational within 30 days, and quarterly assessments would ensure that the changes were being implemented effectively across all Skyline Airways operations. James Patterson, the Chief of Staff, addressed questions about how the company would measure success. We'll be tracking customer satisfaction scores, complaint resolution times, and employee feedback on the new policies, he explained. But ultimately, success will be measured by whether passengers feel respected and valued when they interact with our airline. The press conference also included an announcement that surprised many observers. Maya revealed that Victoria Blackwell had contacted the company requesting an opportunity to participate in the development of the new training programs. Mrs. Blackwell has asked to share her experience as a cautionary tale for other employees, Maya announced. While she will never be rehired by Skyline Airways, we believe there's value in having someone who made these mistakes help others understand the consequences of discrimination. The announcement sparked immediate questions about whether Victoria deserved such an opportunity, but Maya's response demonstrated the same thoughtful leadership she had shown throughout the crisis. Redemption isn't about forgetting what happened or avoiding consequences, Maya explained. It's about learning from mistakes and using that knowledge to prevent others from making similar errors. If Mrs. Blackwell's experience can help even one employee recognize and overcome their own biases, then something positive will have come from a very negative situation. The press conference concluded with Maya addressing the viral nature of the incident and its broader implications for corporate accountability. The fact that millions of people watched this incident unfold shows how hungry the public is for accountability and change, she said. Companies can no longer hide behind policies and procedures when their employees engage in discrimination. Social media has created a level of transparency that demands authentic commitment to equality and respect. 6 months later, Maya Rodriguez sat in the same VIP lounge where she had been humiliated by Victoria Blackwell. But everything had changed. The space itself looked the same. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, panoramic views of the Denver skyline. But the atmosphere was entirely different. Jessica Martinez approached with a warm smile and professional demeanor that had become the new standard for Skyline Airways customer service. Director Rodriguez, welcome back to Denver. Your usual workspace is ready, and I've prepared the quarterly reports you requested for your flight to Seattle. Maya smiled, remembering the courage Jessica had shown in standing up to Victoria despite the risk to her own job. As the new lounge manager, Jessica had transformed the VIP experience into something truly welcoming for all passengers, regardless of their appearance or background. Thank you, Jessica. How are the new training programs working out? Better than we hoped, Jessica replied enthusiastically. Employee satisfaction scores are up. Customer complaints are down by 60%, and we've had several passengers specifically compliment the inclusiveness of our service. Maya walked through the lounge, observing the diverse group of passengers being served with equal attention and respect. A young black businessman in casual clothes was being assisted with the same professionalism as an elderly white woman in designer attire. A Hispanic family with children was welcomed just as warmly as a group of corporate executives. She paused at the computer terminal where Victoria Blackwell had refused to verify her credentials. A small plaque had been installed next to the scanner reading simply, "Every passenger deserves dignity and respect." Her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Maya was surprised to see that it was from Victoria Blackwell. Director Rodriguez, I wanted you to know that I completed my first week as a diversity training consultant. Your example of grace under pressure continues to inspire me to do better. Thank you for showing me that consequences can lead to redemption. Victoria Maya stared at the message for a long moment. Victoria had spent the past 6 months working with a civil rights organization developing training materials based on her experience and the mistakes she had made. The work was unpaid part of her effort to make amends for the damage she had caused. Maya typed back a simple response. Growth comes from facing our failures honestly. Keep doing the work. Captain Hayes approached as Maya prepared to board her flight. Director Rodriguez, I wanted to thank you again for how you handled the situation 6 months ago. The changes you've implemented have made all of us better at our jobs. Thank you, Captain Hayes. But the real credit goes to people like Jessica, who were willing to stand up for what was right, even when it was difficult. As Maya walked toward her gate, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. The humiliation and discrimination she had experienced had been transformed into positive change that benefited countless passengers and employees. The viral video that had made her a symbol of grace under pressure had also made it impossible for companies to ignore the reality of ongoing discrimination. Her phone rang as she settled into her first-class seat. It was Elena, her assistant, calling with an update on the latest passenger feedback reports. Maya, I have the numbers from the customer satisfaction surveys. Overall ratings are at an all-time high, and the comments specifically mention feeling respected and welcomed by our staff. Maya smiled, remembering Victoria's assumption that she didn't belong in first class. Now first class and every other section of Skyline Airways aircraft were spaces where all passengers could feel they belonged. As the aircraft lifted off from Denver, Maya looked down at the airport where her confrontation with Victoria Blackwell had changed both of their lives forever. The incident had been painful, humiliating, and infuriating, but it had also been a catalyst for the kind of change that benefited everyone. The captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Jennifer Walsh. On behalf of the entire crew, welcome aboard Skyline Airways. We're committed to ensuring that every passenger feels respected, valued, and welcomed during their journey with us." Maya closed her eyes, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. Victoria Blackwell had tried to make her feel like she didn't belong. Instead, she had created a space where everyone belonged. 1 year after the incident at Denver International Airport, the Skyline Airways 5IP Lounge had become a model for inclusive customer service throughout the airline industry. Jessica Martinez had been promoted to Regional Customer Service Manager, overseeing improvements at lounges across the western United States. The Dignity First program had expanded beyond Skyline Airways, with other major carriers adopting similar training protocols after seeing the dramatic improvements in customer satisfaction and employee morale. Victoria Blackwell had become an unexpected advocate for change, working with civil rights organizations to develop training materials that helped employees recognize and overcome their unconscious biases. Maya Rodriguez had been promoted to Senior Vice President of Customer Experience, leading industry-wide initiatives to eliminate discrimination in air travel. Her calm response to hatred had become a case study in leadership schools across the country, teaching future executives how to transform crisis into opportunity for positive change. This story hits me right in the heart, because it shows us something we desperately need to see more of in our world: how to respond to injustice with dignity instead of revenge. Maya Rodriguez could have exploded with anger, could have humiliated Victoria right back, could have made the whole situation about payback. Instead, she chose the harder path, using her pain to create change that would benefit everyone. What strikes me most about this story is that Maya didn't just survive discrimination, she transformed it. She took a moment of personal humiliation and turned it into a catalyst for company-wide reform that made air travel better for countless passengers. That's not just leadership, that's courage in action. The lesson here isn't that discrimination is okay if good comes from it. The lesson is that when bad things happen to us, we have a choice about how to respond. We can let hatred make us bitter, or we can use our experience to ensure others don't have to go through what we went through. Maya chose to be a bridge builder instead of a bomb thrower, and that choice changed everything. If this story moved you like it moved me, I want to ask you to do 3 things. First, smash that like button and let me know in the comments what part of Maya's response inspired you the most. Second, hit subscribe and ring that notification bell, because we share stories like this every week that show the power of grace under pressure and dignity in the face of injustice. And third, share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that our responses to injustice define us more than the injustice itself. Remember, real change happens when we choose grace over grudges, progress over payback, and dignity over revenge. Maya Rodriguez showed us what that looks like in action, and her example can guide us all when we face our own moments of testing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video where we continue exploring